For 2 years, fans have watched Kyle Richards, Mauricio Umansky, and Dorit Kemsley become increasingly tangled in one of the most complicated relationship dramas to ever come out of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. But what if everything we've been watching wasn't random? What if the arguments, the awkward encounters, the sudden distance, and the shocking alliances were all pieces of a much bigger story? A theory has now exploded among fans claiming that Dorit and Mauricio may have had a secret agenda aimed directly at Kyle. And if that theory were ever proven, it would completely change the way viewers see the entire RHOBH timeline. Because Kyle wasn't just connected to Mauricio through their marriage. She was also connected to Dorit through years of friendship. That meant any conflict involving one of them had the potential to affect all three. And suddenly, every suspicious interaction starts looking different. Was Mauricio simply moving on with his life? Was Dorit genuinely trying to understand what happened? Or could there have been a much deeper strategy developing behind the scenes? There is one problem, though. There is no verified evidence proving that Dorit and Mauricio secretly planned for 2 years to destroy Kyle. So today, we are separating the confirmed events from the explosive fan theories, and looking at why this particular theory has gained so much attention. Because once you connect the timeline, the questions become impossible to ignore. To understand why this theory exists, we have to go back to the foundation. Kyle and Mauricio weren't simply another reality TV couple. For years, they were presented as one of the strongest marriages inside the Beverly Hills universe. They built a family. They built businesses. They built a public image. And they built friendships with people inside the RHOBH circle. Dorit was part of that world. She knew Kyle. She knew Mauricio. And she understood the dynamics of their relationship better than most outsiders ever could. But then everything started changing. Kyle and Mauricio's marriage entered a period of uncertainty, and the couple eventually separated. Suddenly, the woman who had spent years talking about her marriage as part of her identity was forced to figure out who she was outside of it. And that changed the entire social dynamic. Mauricio was no longer simply Kyle's husband. Kyle was no longer simply Mauricio's wife. And their friends suddenly had to figure out where they stood. That's where Dorit became particularly interesting. Because Dorit wasn't just watching the breakdown from a distance. She was personally connected to Kyle. And she also had her own marriage problems with Kemsley. So suddenly, two women who had spent years discussing relationships, loyalty, marriage, and friendship were experiencing major changes in their personal lives at almost the same time. And that's when viewers began noticing something. The friendship between Kyle and Dorit didn't feel the same. The warmth wasn't always there. The trust seemed weaker. And conversations that once would have been private were increasingly becoming public. That created the perfect environment for speculation. Fans started asking, what happened between Kyle and Dorit? Was it simply friendship drama? Or was something much bigger happening? Then Mauricio entered the conversation. And that's when things became explosive. Mauricio has always been an important figure in Kyle's story. Even after their separation, he remained connected to her through their children, their history, and their years together. That made any interaction he had with another woman automatically interesting to fans. Especially when that woman happened to be someone from Kyle's own social circle. And that's exactly why the Dorit Mauricio rumors became so powerful. One interaction could suddenly be interpreted in dozens of different ways. A conversation became suspicious. A photograph became evidence. A friendly exchange became a possible secret relationship. And before long, social media began constructing an entire narrative. But here's where we need to slow down. Rumors are not evidence. There has been speculation about Dorit and Mauricio, but speculation does not prove that they were secretly working together against Kyle. Still, The theory gained momentum because of the circumstances surrounding all three. Kyle was dealing with the end of her marriage. Dorit was dealing with changes in her own personal life. Mauricio was building his life separately from Kyle. And the three remained connected through the same Beverly Hills social universe. That is exactly the kind of environment where alliances can shift. But the theory takes things much further. According to the fan theory, Dorit and Mauricio allegedly realized that Kyle's biggest vulnerability wasn't her career. It wasn't her fame. It wasn't even her marriage. It was her trust. If Kyle believed someone was loyal to her, she opened the door. And if that trust disappeared, the entire relationship could collapse. That's where the 2-year revenge plot theory comes from. The theory suggests that rather than confronting Kyle directly, Dorit and Mauricio could have allowed tension to build gradually. No single event would be enough to expose anything. Instead, there would be small moments. Small disagreements. Small betrayals. Small questions. Until eventually, Kyle would find herself surrounded by people she no longer trusted. Again, there is no verified evidence that such a plan actually existed. But that's the theory that has been circulating. And it gets even more interesting when you look at what happened next. Imagine for a moment that someone wanted revenge without making it obvious. They wouldn't announce the plan. They wouldn't leave a trail. They wouldn't tell everyone what they were doing. They would simply wait. That's the foundation of the theory. Fans who believe the revenge plot narrative argue that the alleged strategy was about patience. 2 years is a long time. People change. Relationships evolve. And public attention moves from one scandal to another. That would supposedly give anyone attempting a long-term strategy plenty of opportunities to create doubt. And Kyle had plenty of pressure around her already. Her marriage to Mauricio was changing. Her relationship with Dorit was becoming complicated. And her personal life was increasingly being discussed publicly. So if someone wanted to make her feel isolated, the circumstances were already there. But there is an important distinction. There is a massive difference between taking advantage of circumstances and secretly creating those circumstances. There is currently no credible evidence establishing that Dorit or Mauricio deliberately engineered Kyle's personal problems. That's why the revenge plot claim should remain in the category of speculation. Still, viewers notice the changing dynamics. People who once seemed inseparable weren't always appearing together. Conversations became more guarded. Friendships were questioned. And Kyle increasingly found herself having to explain her relationships to the public. That is exhausting. Especially when the people involved are supposed to be your friends. And this is where the alleged plan becomes psychologically interesting. If Kyle began questioning everyone around her, the alleged plot would essentially succeed without anyone having to do anything dramatic. Because once trust disappears, people start looking for evidence everywhere. A text message feels suspicious. A missing invitation feels intentional. A private conversation feels like betrayal. And suddenly, the person doesn't know who they can believe. That may be exactly why this theory has resonated with fans. But there is still no proof that Dorit and Mauricio actually coordinated such a strategy. And that distinction matters. Dorit's position is especially complicated. She was once one of Kyle's close friends. But as the RHOBH dynamics changed, their friendship became increasingly complicated. And whenever two longtime friends fall out, people immediately start searching for a villain. That's human nature. Fans want to know who betrayed whom. But real friendships are rarely that simple. There can be misunderstandings. There can be resentment. There can be jealousy. There can be unresolved arguments. And sometimes people simply grow apart. That's why claiming that Dorit spent 2 years plotting against Kyle requires far more evidence than a collection of suspicious moments. You would need communications. You would need a timeline. You would need witnesses. And most importantly, you would need direct evidence showing coordination. Without that, the theory remains exactly that, a theory. But Dorit's connection to Mauricio is what keeps the speculation alive. Because Mauricio isn't just any random man. He's Kyle's former husband. So if Dorit and Mauricio become close, fans naturally ask whether Kyle was comfortable with it. And if she wasn't, the tension becomes even more complicated. This is why reality TV relationships can become so explosive. The people involved don't exist in separate worlds. Their lives overlap. Their friendships overlap. Their families overlap. Their businesses overlap. And their television storylines overlap. So one relationship changing can affect everyone else. That's why the Dorit Mauricio Kyle triangle has become such a major talking point. But the question remains: was this simply life unfolding? Or was somebody intentionally pushing the situation toward chaos? Right now, we don't have enough verified evidence to say. Now here's where the theory gets even more fascinating. Whenever people hear the word revenge, the first question should be: what would the person actually gain? If Dorit and Mauricio supposedly wanted to hurt Kyle, what would they gain from doing it? Money? Publicity? Emotional satisfaction? Control? Or simply revenge for something that happened behind the scenes? That's the part the theory never completely answers. And that's why skepticism is important. A real 2-year conspiracy would be incredibly difficult to maintain. Too many people would have to stay silent. Too many conversations would have to remain private. Too many opportunities for someone to expose the plan would exist. And reality television is one of the worst environments for keeping secrets. Everyone has cameras around them. Everyone has microphones. Everyone has social media. And everyone has an incentive to tell their own side of the story. Eventually, somebody usually talks. That's why, if a genuine revenge plot existed, the strongest evidence would likely come from direct documentation. Messages, emails, recordings, or testimony from someone directly involved. Until something like that appears, the dramatic theory remains unproven. But there is something else worth considering. Maybe there was never a coordinated plan. Maybe Kyle's relationships simply changed because life changed. Maybe Mauricio's separation from Kyle created new social connections. Maybe Dorit's own marriage problems changed the way she viewed friendship. Maybe everyone involved was simply reacting emotionally to circumstances they didn't fully control. And sometimes that explanation is more believable than a secret conspiracy. So where does this leave Kyle, Dorit, and Mauricio? Potentially at one of the most complicated crossroads yet. Because even without a revenge plot, the relationships have already changed. Kyle and Mauricio have to continue navigating life after their marriage. Dorit has her own personal journey. And their friendships are no longer operating under the same circumstances as they did years ago. That means the future could go in several directions. They could eventually reconcile. They could remain distant. They could publicly explain what happened. Or another revelation could completely change the narrative. And that's what makes this story so compelling. Because the next major piece of information could come from anyone. Kyle could finally speak openly. Dorit could reveal what she really thinks about Mauricio. Mauricio could address the rumors directly. Or someone from their inner circle could release information that changes everything. But until that happens, the alleged 2-year revenge plot should remain a fan theory rather than a confirmed fact. And maybe that's the biggest mystery of all. If there really was a plan, someone eventually has to explain it. If there wasn't, someone may eventually have to explain why the theory became so convincing to so many viewers. Either way, the questions aren't going away. Because when friendships collapse inside Beverly Hills, fans don't just want to know what happened. They want to know why. And until Kyle, Dorit, or Mauricio gives the complete story, everyone else is left trying to connect the dots. So now the question is simple. Was there really a 2-year revenge strategy, or did 3 complicated relationships simply collide at the worst possible time? Because if the truth finally comes out, the entire RHOBH story could look completely different. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Dorit and Mauricio actually had some kind of secret plan against Kyle? Or do you think this 2-year revenge plot is simply another theory created by fans trying to connect unrelated events? And if you were Kyle, could you trust either of them again? Drop your opinion in the comments. Do you believe there was a plan, or is the internet taking this too far? If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell because there are always more twists waiting inside the world of Beverly Hills. And remember, when the truth finally comes out, we'll be here to break down every detail. What do you think really happened between Kyle, Dorit, and Mauricio?